think a lot of politicians do understand money.
Legislator, they don't understand why sound money is important.
Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Tiger Stacker. Today, I have an extra special interview with two amazing guests. You already know my first one. She's been my first teacher in precious metals. She is the queen of financial analysis. My second guest is attorney Chris Pitt, who was part of the House of Delegates and in 2024 got a two-bill legislation for sound money, which was killed in committee. He's now running for state senate in West Virginia. And basically, why do I want you all to watch this? Mainly so you all, no matter what state you're in, contact your legislation so that you all can get sound money started if you don't already have it. So without further ado, let me introduce to you my two guests, Lynette Zang and Chris Pitt. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, hi, Tiger.
Before we start, though, you know, I went to Australia, and what did you ask me for, Tiger? A kangaroo.
Yes, I did.
So you will be getting your kangaroo.
I thought you were just rolling with my teasing.
You know, honest to goodness, I knew somebody asked me for a kangaroo. I could not remember who, but I brought one back, and only one, just for you.
Thank you, Lynette. I appreciate it. Maybe one day I'll make it to Australia and I'll actually get to see one in person.
That would be awesome.
To cover everything for everyone, we are not going to talk partisan politics. We're going to talk about sound money, about legislation and how it affects sound money and how it can protect you, your family, our community, and even our local communities. I'm not going to do a lot of the talking. I'm going to let Lynette and Chris talk and get to know each other. But this today is the Chris and Lynette show.
Well, I'm really excited to meet you, Chris, because we need more and more legislators to understand what sound money is and why it's called sound money, because I don't think a lot of politicians do understand really money. And so I need to know what I can do to help you in your efforts to help all of us.
Great. Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things that's very, very helpful, I think, is anytime we can get a hold of what I call model legislation. I've used that in the past, and a lot of people don't know what model legislation is. So I have used model legislation in the past. I don't know if you're familiar with its Sound Money Defense League.
Yes, I am.
Okay. I've worked with those guys in the past, and they've helped me come up with some model legislation for gold and silver as legal tender in West Virginia. We put that forth. That's one major way. So if you or anybody else has any ideas about some good legislation, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand is a lot of times with legislation, you don't have to start from scratch. What we typically do, and then, by the way, the House of Delegates in West Virginia, that's the equivalent in other states as the state House of Representatives. That's just what we call it. There's 3 states that use the term House of Delegates. That's Virginia, West Virginia, and Maryland. So if anybody's wondering, what do you mean by House of Delegates? It's like the state level of House of Representatives. One of the things that's very helpful, though, is, again, the having some model legislation. So if there's any kind of groups out there that work on legislation, ALEC is one organization that sometimes I understand has some pretty good model legislation. But coming forth with some good solid language that can be used, and language that's been used in other states, because oftentimes you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel when it comes to legislation. And that's one of the things that you do actually as an attorney, is that you see a good argument and it's perfectly acceptable. If you see another attorney who's got a good argument and you like some language in a motion or in a petition or something, we just pull that language and we just sometimes adopt it verbatim, and that's okay. I mean, that's perfectly fine. The goal is to get good solid legislation, and it has nothing to do with who wrote it, who came up with it. We just need to make sure that we have good legislation that has clear language, that's easy to understand, that's not going to be challenged in court, that's going to be lasting over the decades. That's something that people can do to really, really help out. The other thing that people can do is recognize that they can have an impact on legislation. I can
Yeah.
tell you that the lower the level, what in terms of government in general, people think there's always flashiness when it comes to really, really big offices, okay? Whether it's governor or US senator or president or even Congress. There are these big offices, but I think generally speaking, the higher you go in office, the harder it is to get anything done. That's the great thing about state legislatures. In state legislatures, you can have a real impact because there's, to an extent, even when one party controls the White House and Congress, it's very difficult to get anything through just based on the nature of the federal government and how our government is set up. The real meat and potatoes of getting things done oftentimes is at the state legislative level, or even in some instances, on the city council level. But the lower the level, I think, the more of an impact you can have.
That makes
So
sense.
one of the things that you can do is I mean, when I was in the House of Delegates, I gave up my cell phone. People would just call me up. In the West Virginia House of Delegates, unless the legislative session was in, which was only for about 60 days per year, unless there's a special session, we were just in for 60 days. We might have a staff of one person that we share. If you're just like, if you don't run a committee or something, you've got like one staff person you share with 6 other people. Okay, so we're basically just there, and for all practical purposes, we didn't have a staff. If you're just a regular run-of-the-mill member of the legislature, and then as you move up, you might have more staff, but you can have direct contact, and that's how it is in West Virginia and in a lot of states. You can have direct contact with your legislator, and you can call them up, and chances are you can talk with them. Now, the other side to that is if you don't like what your legislator is doing, you can have a real impact in terms of making it known to them that you don't like what they're doing. And maybe you could have an impact of some sort with them not necessarily having that position in a year or two, because one person can have a huge impact on these races. And so that's one of the things that I think people have to understand. The other thing that I think is really important is that when you're approaching these people, whether it's me or anybody else, is some of the tactics that they're going to use. Okay, one of the tactics that is often used by politicians in general is flattery. A lot of times people come out of these conversations, they don't realize that, you're here, you're talking to this person, they're really friendly with you, they're patting you on the back, they're telling you, oh, that's a great idea, okay, oh yeah, let's do this or that. And at the end of the day, they don't do anything to push your issue at all. They don't do anything to move your issue. And they might act like it's some big deal to even get a piece of legislation proposed. Well, in West Virginia, in many states, it's as simple as you go to the bill drafting department for your legislature and you tell them what you want, and their job is to come up with it. It's that simple oftentimes. Now, it's going to vary from state to state, okay? But getting a bill actually introduced in most legislatures is easier than what a lot of people make it out to be. Now, what we typically do is, especially with gold and silver legislation, I try to introduce it, and I use model language like I talked about before. The difficult part is what comes after that, because in most legislators, there's a handful of people that are going to be what I would call the real power brokers about whether a piece of legislation is going to get through. When a bill is introduced, it's going to be assigned to one or more committees. Usually, for all practical purposes, if the chair of that committee will not push forth a bill, it's not going to go anywhere. So knowing that chairman or chairwoman is there and they can completely stop a bill from getting passed, that's an issue, okay? Then if you make it through the committee, it's got to go to the floor, and there's going to be maybe 1 or 2 other committees it's got to go through before it gets there. And then if you get through that whole process, it's got to go over to the other half of the state legislature, and then it's got to go through a similar process. And then if you can somehow get something passed in one body or the other, they may have made changes to it. And so there's going to be a back and forth between the two bodies trying to agree on the language. And then once you get through that entire process, it's going to go to the governor, who may or may not veto it. So my point is, when it comes to legislation, make sure that you're aware of what the politicians are going to do. Be aware that they're going to try to engage in flattery, and make sure that you've got to you've got to know that they are not necessarily going to push your bill, and you've got to put the pressure on them.
So in your experience, how much do you think legislators or politicians actually understand what sound money is? Because, I can tell you, as I've been doing this for a very long time, and it was even recently that I was talking to my attorney turned gym rat, and I lift weights with him, and I made mention one day that silver was our money at one point, and he's in his mid 40s and he was
Mhm.
shocked. And I was shocked that he was shocked, but it helped me understand that people do not understand what sound money is. And so to ask them to vote on something without really understanding what it is, and also I think the advantages and disadvantages over one system versus the other system. And then finally, the currency's life cycle.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a huge, huge problem. Is most people, I mean, if we're talking about your typical run-of-the-mill legislator, most probably have no idea about those issues. They don't understand it. They don't understand why sound money is important. And I think that's a big part of the process. And I think if someone is going to organize on this sort of thing, you can't just wait until the legislative session starts. You can't just
Right.
wait. You've got to start early, and you have to start setting meetings with multiple people so they understand why it's important. The other thing that I think is important is that you understand who the opposition is to any kind of legislation, who you're going to
Yes.
be going up against. There could be people with the banking lobby that might not necessarily want it. There are people, generally speaking, no matter what issue there is, there's probably going to be a group out there that is going to be opposing what you're doing. And so what you need to be prepared for that. But I think educating people on it, making sure people have a firm grasp of why it's important, why we need sound money, whether it's sound money or any other issue, educating them, letting them know, like, and it could be taking them out to lunch, okay? Going out to lunch and just talking about it. But I think that's a big part of it. And I would say far and few between really understand the issue and
Oh,
why it's important.
Conservative Chris Pritt puts our Mountaineer values of faith, family, and hard work first. Chris Pritt's voted against every tax increase, fought to lower property taxes to protect our wallets. Pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-Trump. Conservative Chris Pritt for State Senate.
When Ron Paul was in Arizona pushing for sound money in the Arizona legislature, and he was really quite brilliant in his speech and that's really what helped me understand that our politicians don't know what sound money is. So therefore,
Right.
even if they're trying to do the best for their constituents, you don't know what you don't know. And how many times can you be lied to when you do not know the truth? And it's
Mhm.
really easy to see how the current debt-based system favors the few and disfavors the many. So I think I work on the Citizens for Sound Money with Daniel Diaz, which I know you recently had a conversation with Daniel
Mhm.
as well. But
Yes.
maybe we can do something about putting a broader program together, because it might be hard to get somebody to go out for lunch, right?
Mhm.
And have that conversation. And it needs to be something that is so simple that that they could repeat it when they go home to their wife or their kids or their husband or their family at night.
Yes, I think that's a great way to put it. It needs to be boiled down in such a way that just like a regular person can understand. And look, most of the time, legislators are just regular people. It's not like they're sitting in Congress and they have all of these years of experience. I mean, in most legislators out there, they're serving part time. They have another job. They're your farmers. They're your small business owners, teachers. It could be a guy who just drives a bus. And so it's important that it's no matter what it is. And I think that's important to do anyways. I mean, if you can boil it down in a way that your
Mhm.
average person can understand, it's going to be more likely to stick with them too.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been my quest forever. How do I explain this in a way that people understand that? And I think I do that reasonably well. And don't say anything, Tiger, because I know you're going to say blah, 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 but I can do better. I can do better. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to do it, better. And the way I'm looking at sound money is really about the public taking their power back. And you make a
Hmm.
lot of sense to me. And I'm starting to see some other things because the local legislator that you would have access to needs to understand what sound money is and how that helps his constituents.
Hmm.
Because when you get to the federal level, it really is and it's always been this, the public against the corporations. Because when they
Yes.
say, if you read the conversation around setting the system up to begin with, the government wanted to tax you without having to make it public. So the inflation tax works for them.
Yes.
But for corporations, they wanted to pay the public less, but they knew that if the public was used to getting $5, they weren't going to accept $1. However, inflation can make that $5 spend like $1. And what do we have but that K-shaped recovery?
Yeah.
So inflation benefits corporations. Do you think politicians at the state level, at the local level, understand that piece? Because that's really who the battle is against, since they have I mean, Amazon has way deeper pockets than I have, for sure. I mean, no question.
I had probably the biggest, when I first got elected, probably just in general, I'm going to speak in broader terms in terms of corporations, but I think it relates to your point. One of the biggest epiphanies I had when I first got into office was whenever we were, and I forget the nature of the bill, but there was a bill that was going through the legislature, and the lobby for some of the larger corporations that I won't name, but the lobby for them were actually pushing for more government regulation on something. And
who's going to write the regulation?
exactly. And that's one of the things I always tell younger new legislators is, look, just because it's a business doesn't mean it's, number one, pro business in a broader sense, which includes smaller business, or number two,
Right.
whether they're pushing something that is pro capitalism, because they're not necessarily those are two separate things. A couple of inferences I made, and they wouldn't come out and say it, but a few of the inferences that I picked up on with this particular piece of legislation that was going through is I'd figured out that they were pushing this piece of legislation because it was anti-competitive. I mean, these larger corporations, what they can do is they can absorb these regulations. They can absorb government. Whatever the government throws at them, there's a good chance they can absorb it, and they can.
Absolutely.
It's no big deal to them. But what they oftentimes do is they leverage that. They leverage, like they almost want to get a pass. Like say, oh, we're the good guys. We're in favor of the regulations. We're in favor of more government. Let's be friends. When in reality, all they're doing is they're trying to take out their smaller competitors.
Right.
That's a lot of times that's it. And so absolutely. So to the broader point, I think oftentimes it's the large scale corporations who are fine in the banks and a lot of the larger banks. It's all of them against us. And a lot of times it's this relationship, this terrible symbiotic relationship between government and big business that are just doing everything they can to penalize just regular people.
Well, it really is like a wealth transfer mechanism, but also, it is the Wall Street funding machine that has basically destroyed mom and pop. And it was interesting because I recently watched this, like a National Geographic show on how to rejuvenate the world. Right? The earth, right? And because we've taken out predators, and then that means that like deer can eat the lower limbs, and then that has impact on the birds and other things. And so we're destroying our earth. But I could also liken it to what I see happening with the people, because this is not a capitalist system. This is a crony capitalist system where winners and losers were chosen. And we've basically annihilated the mom and pop, which was and is still the support for the local community to keep the wealth in the local community. So what could we do? Because the corporations, they just create their own legislation, and then that makes it harder for mom and pops. But there still are some mom and pops out there, and we need to protect them and then open things up for more of that to grow to support the local community.
Before I go on the silent mode again, especially since Lynette told me not to talk so much, I'm sorry. I tried to have fun with that. I contacted Daniel Diaz. He had an amazing panel interview live stream last night where they talked about sound money and how Maryland passed some laws that hurt the citizens, hurt the businesses, and they were actually losing tax money. And then they're trying to fix it this year, and how it was completely winning because it was nonpartisan. Then after that, I contacted Daniel by text, and he said he would love to have me get a little bit more involved in sound money movement. I'm going to go back to silent mode here and let my teacher, who knows way more than I do, teach you.
We learn from each other, Tiger. We
Oh, yeah, we
learn
do.
from each other. Hopium, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You gave me that.
Well, I'm going to share with you one little cutesy thing here. I'm just going to grab it real fast.
Oh,
I had to get mine tigerized.
I don't mind tigerizing it. That's great. I mean, really, this is how do you build a movement? I don't know how to do it. I'm just dancing as fast as I can. And now you're going to dance and you're going to dance. And, the people that are watching this, they're really the army because there's only so much that you can do, Chris, right? There's only so much that Tiger or I can do or anybody else can do. But if we can get this word out and work together to get sound money back in the system, and I'm going to say something that sounds outrageous, but it has to be redeemable. You, the public, if you don't like what you see the government or the central bankers doing, have to have something to hold these guys' toes to the fire. Exactly. And say, okay, it doesn't have to be one-to-one. It can be an electronic system, but hey, I don't like what you're doing. Give me my gold back, because otherwise you have no power. The public has no power.
Absolutely. Well, I think right now might be an ideal time to really jump on this based on how people are feeling. I mean, despite what anybody says, when you just talk to, I don't know what it's like where you're at, but around here in West Virginia, when you just talk to people are feeling the pinch. They really are. I'm hearing that from talking with voters out there every single day. They're feeling the pinch with higher prices, and I think this message could really resonate with them about, look, we've got to bring some sanity back to the system. I mean, it's
Yeah.
these policies that you see coming from Washington they're just undermining our ability to have any kind of standard of living. And I think when you put it like that, and I think that's the reason why I think this is a message that could resonate across the board, no matter what a person's political affiliation, because
Right.
everybody out there is feeling the pinch from it. Right?
Exactly. I mean, we got to make sure that we connect with you, and we'll get you some dime cards. But this is a dime from when silver was part of our system. And on the day that we bought it, which happened to be February 27th of 2026, this one dime cost us $6.72. Now, the dimes that were minted after 1964 are just garbage. And what can you buy with 10 cents today? And that seems to resonate a lot, and we'll send you this. So maybe that's something that you can also pass out and share. And then of course there's a QR code to learn more. But this is so important because for me, simply put, sound money is above all governments and all central bankers' ability to inflate away. Why? Not because I say so, but because physical gold is actually used in 33 different sectors of the global economy.
Wow.
Physical silver is used in 36 different sectors of the global economy. So it's simply, and there's a finite amount of them. So it's simply a supply and demand mechanism that they have not been able to duplicate in the law. That's why this was $6.72 the day that I happened to buy it. But that doesn't even reflect its true value. And that's what I'd love people to understand. That's what Wall Street put on it. And Wall Street is just a trading machine.
Oh, yeah.
The bank's making money.
This channel is affiliated with Zang International. The owner, Lynette Zang, is a major financial analyst who has been warning the stacking community of upcoming SHTF for multiple years, even before many other channels were doing so. She advises her mantra of stacking food, water, shelter, barterability, which is silver, wealth preservation, which is gold, protection, and most importantly, community. Her and her team of advisors are available weekday to assist you in making your individualized stacking strategy based upon what your individualized goals are and situation that you are in. She especially specializes in rare pre-33 slab gold as a top tier in your stacking strategy. However, if you're not ready for that, they also deal in more common silver and gold items for your purchase. Please feel free to visit Lynette's channel and also her strategy specialists to get your individualized stacking strategy tweaked as you need. You can reach her at 833-GLD-ZANG or 833-453-9264. The QR code is on display and the contact information is in the description below. And don't forget to tell them Tiger Stacker sent you.
Woohoo! knew there was lots of volatility. So they made lots of money.
Absolutely. And then the politicians, they almost always figure out a way to bail them out, no matter how bad they screw it up. I mean, in terms of all of that, the system, the politicians always figure out a way to bail out the banks. And the banks are a big part of the problem.
Yes, they are.
They're comfortable with the status quo. And that's one of the things that I think is really important about state legislatures too, is that you're closer to the people. Just about anybody, even like on the, like a state representative level, it's possible for, I mean, if you make a few people mad and they want to go out and knock doors and pass out stuff against you, if they're mad enough, they can do that. I knew one legislator, he didn't spend a dime, but he just spent 6 months just knocking on people's door and talking to people to get elected.
Yep.
But the point is, you can, through that sort of activity and grassroots organization, you can have a real impact. But I think it's important that people not only form a cohesive organization within a state to try to advocate for something, and you have that too. You have that here in West Virginia for other kinds of groups, okay? Not necessarily what we're talking about here, but you've got to have a core group that organizes within a state. And then what needs to happen is you need to find related groups with whom to network with. I mean, there are broader networks out there. And a lot of times, and again, and I'm not saying this to get partisan, but let me say this, there are rhymes and rhythms when it comes to issues, such that certain issues and they tend to gravitate towards certain political philosophies. And a lot of times you can find a lot of those people. And if you can associate with a number of issues, like I have groups that support me, and there are other issues that are important as well, not just sound money, but there are other issues in what I would call, let's say, the broader liberty movement. There are a number of other issues that the groups support, not just sound money, but other issues as well that are in that broader category. I mean, you had mentioned Ron Paul. A lot of it's related to the outgrowth of the Ron Paul movement from back in 2012 and things that came from that. So there's a lot of that. And I think finding these national networks, organizing locally, but also finding national networks that are going to be there to support you, that are going to be able to give you access to resources. Like I talked earlier about the model language. The reason I'm able to get good model language sometimes for bills that I introduce is that I have national networks that I can have access to. There are people out there, people who do very well, that have done very well in life, that are willing to fund a lot of these organizations. Well, you talked about a sound money organization. I mean, there are people that are donating to that probably, that support that, and that's great. I mean, there are organizations that out there that have executive directors. And look, the money might just go to basically funding an executive director and a small staff, but those people are working at it full time. But there are these national networks, and finding those national networks and issues, I think that's really, really important for people. That's where I would probably start. I mean, I've got enough on my plate right now. I can't just focus on gold and silver. But if this were a really, really important issue to me, I would number one, try to find like-minded people in my community, in my state, and then just figure out how to network nationally, because these people are very, very inclined to help when it comes to that, when they can find people with common cause. I mean, people would be surprised. I mean, if you're willing to put in your time, there are people out there nationally that will help. I would almost guarantee it.
Well, kind of the way that I did it and the way that I ended up getting involved with Citizens for Sound Money, because I didn't know where to start. And I know that a lot of people feel like, well, it's nice to say how easy it is. And it's great to know that you actually had given out your cell phone number. But what I did, because I have a platform, is I just kept talking about it and saying, I want to. And so then Citizens for Sound Money actually found me. I didn't really go out there so much because I wouldn't know where to start to go out there to find those groups. So like, how did somebody get your cell phone number? How can I get my local legislator's cell phone number to have that direct contact?
Well, it's going to depend on the actual legislator. Some of them don't give them out, and you're just not going to get it. But some of them might have a full-time staff. But it's going to be helpful to at least, let's say that you're living in a state where you do have a full-time legislature, or sometimes states will have a part-time legislature, but they'll have a full-time staff person. They might have like a full-time secretary who's there at the Capitol every single day, reaching out to that person, calling them and saying, "Hey, I would like to have a phone conversation. I would like to have a meeting or a conference with with that person. Just doing that and just setting the appointment. Most of the time, I mean, most legislators would be very interested. This is what politicians are. There are certain things that they love. Number one, they love attention. Number two, they love campaign dollars. Number three, they love thinking that they're going to be able to win over a voter. And that's a slam dunk way that they can necessarily potentially win over a voter. So I think people are far more inclined to talk to somebody than what most people would think. Most people that I know that are in elected office, they will return phone calls. People are thinking like,
that's great. That this is such good information, because honest to goodness, you wouldn't think that as just a citizen. Like, who am I? I'm nobody, right?
right. No, but you just have to think about it from the perspective of the person who's in that office. They probably want to be reelected one of these days. And if there's bad information that gets out there that they're not returning calls or they're not getting back to their constituents, it could spread. There are instances where somebody will go on blast on social media talking about, well, so-and-so didn't get back to me. And when you do that, they'll eventually, they might even be a little bit more responsive. So it's worth the effort. Just make the call, pick up the phone, just see what happens.
You know what? I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it on camera, so that we can all have this experience together. Because really, I don't know how to do any of this, but I'm brave enough to try, right?
Yeah.
I'm brave enough to pick up a phone and see what I can do, because there really is nothing that's more important than the public taking their power back.
Absolutely.
Sound money is one way to do it, but I also can see how becoming more involved in local politics, regardless of the party, but to make sure that the public locally takes the power back, because that's been taken away from us.
Absolutely.
And they're not going to volunteer it, and banks are not going to give up their money monopoly.
No.
And corporations, people don't realize it. Have you ever questioned this piece of paper that we have here that says Federal Reserve note?
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve is a private corporation. A note is a debt instrument. And by the way, I'd like to, when you have a minute to breathe, I would love to share with you some of the data from when they started from the horse's mouth, so from the central bank's mouth, how they started it and converted sound money into corporate debt and got away with it. I have all the proof from the horse's mouth, not airy-fairy sites or whatever. It's mind-blowing.
That's great.
But
well, I appreciate that.
Well, right, because then taking some of this information and making it really small so that you can get somebody to sit down for a minute or two or three and get the gist of it, catch their attention so that they want to know a little bit more and a little bit more. That's what we have to do with the people that are making the laws, with the legislators. That's how I think we can really, because do you have like an under 5 minute pitch on sound money and why this is so important?
Oh gosh, like right now, I mean, I've never really had that with in terms of, I've never really had to present that to anybody because it's just never come up. I mean, I've had conversations with people. What I would
We need
say,
to put something together for you, right?
Yes.
We need to give you the tools and the support to go out there so that you can do what you do best, right? And if we can catch their attention enough for them to go, maybe I need to know a little bit more about this, then you have an open ear. Because I can tell you, I'm very redundant in my work, because I know that it takes an average person at least 7 times of hearing, smelling, tasting, seeing the same thing from different ways, so that until it even begins to make a level of sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I would say that honestly, because it's something that I'm working on anyway, been working on with Daniel Diaz as well, that we can put together something like that. It's a tool in your arsenal, and then whatever other support. So when you're done with the campaign, I think we need to get together so I can see where your pain is. And then, because I've been doing this on some level since honestly 1964.
Oh wow, great. Yeah, I think that sounds great. I mean, I think that would be incredibly helpful to not just me, but other people out there that might be in legislative office. Yeah,
Exactly.
you just come up with you just come up with one script that can be basically used over and over again. Yeah, just boils it down. It's as clear cut as can be. Absolutely. That sounds like a great idea.
All right. Well, it sounds like we need to get together again.
Yes.
I know you've got a huge push, so I'm not going to ask you for anything before that. But between now and and then
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to reach out to my legislator and see how that goes. So I may have more questions for you, and you can help me with that.
Yes.
Too, right? So this is how we build community, right?
Yes.
We've got to
Mhm.
have local community because we have to support each other. And as we go through what we're about to go through, things get very local, and we can see a lot of people in our communities that need some help. I feel like it's an obligation for all of us to participate. I created an urban farm, and I planted out I'm on a pretty prominent corner, and I
Oh,
planted
okay.
it all out in food so that my neighbors and people that walk by can pick a pomegranate, they can pick a zucchini, they can feed themselves, because food becomes the single biggest issue for people as we make these transitions. And I
Oh, wow.
really don't like it when anybody goes hungry. I'd feed the
Yes.
world if I could, but that's a little beyond my capacity. But I can spread the word and help others do it. It's how you build community, and we have to do it globally. So bottom up with the legislation and local. But as you know, I just got back from Australia and New Zealand, and I handed out a lot of these dime cards, and I can
Really?
do it and explain it in less than 30 seconds.
So what was their response? What were the people that you spoke with?
Fabulous, because people are, first of all, especially if it is a family with children that are at least like 6, 7, 8, right? That is, I give it to the kids, right? And
Yeah.
I'll walk up, I'll ask if I can do it first. The response then from not just the kids are like, oh my God, I gave, this is a piece of silver. This is, what date was that? 1941 on that? Oh my God, that's so old. So the
Yes.
kids are like going crazy because it's money, right? And I've given them 2 dimes, but this one is silver. And then the parents want to have conversation. I do try and keep it under 30 seconds because I was on vacation. But
Okay.
I know some of these dime cards are on their way to Hong Kong. I know some of them are on their way to, there's a lot that are in Australia, but all different parts of the world, because I was in areas where there were people visiting from all parts of the world. The response is fabulous. They can't believe it. If they're
Wow.
my age, so they had silver, it reminds them of the silver. But when they see the difference in the purchasing power, it's like a light goes on. Like, oh,
Wow.
because inflation is not a monetary phenomenon. It is a fiat money phenomenon by design. And the big battle is against the corporations, which are not just the
Absolutely.
banks, it's also the Amazons of the world and the Metas of the world. And that's formidable. But it was 3% of a vocal population that created the Revolutionary War. And it's
Yes.
time and an opportunity for a monetary revolution for the public to take their power back. That's my
But
opinion.
we had prior to coming on here, Tiger and I were talking about that. I've used that same point on his podcast before, right? How many times have like at least 2 or 3 times, right, Tiger?
At least 3, probably more. At least one of them with Daniel Diaz.
Yes. Oh, but you an interesting point you were making there. You were talking about giving the coins to the 6, 7, 8-year-old. I think kids at that age, I think that's a really, really good age to start introducing them to a lot of these concepts and ideas. Like I had my 8-year-old is just he's so fascinated with coins and gold and silver and everything. And then we actually, I don't know if Tiger told you this, but he went on the show once. A while, like what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago that he went on with you?
Something like that.
Yes.
It was an amazing experience, Lynette. I didn't have permission to show his face, so we only showed his hands. But if everyone could have seen, not just heard the excitement in his voice, but seen, he was on point. His eyes were sparkly. He got most of the questions right. He particularly loves Eisenhower silver dollars, so that's mainly what the education was on. But I'm planning on doing some more work with his son, doing some it was so much fun being a pseudo grandparent teaching a pseudo grandson. By the way, the viewers, please go see that video. His son is amazing. And if you want to see a smart kid learn and get some motivation to teach your children, your grandchildren, do it.
Yep.
And this is going to help them pass the information along so they can protect their families when they're our ages.
Well, it's not, this is going to protect them today, because if we don't, what do they have intention for us, Tiger? They want to take us into a digital full surveillance economy.
And
Then
they're
they have
very good.
absolute control.
And they're very good at mind control.
Well, they know how to do it. It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
formal program, perception management. Thank you, Ronald Reagan, because he's really the one that formalized that program, and they haven't stopped yet. But I love that your son was there, Chris, because this is, it's not old people like me that's going to really drive this revolution. I have the experience, I have the knowledge base that I'm anxious to share, but I do a lot of work with like this young entrepreneurs group. They had me on and I did a what is money and just a basics, and they all got dime cards and they asked me to come back again. But that is the hope for the future. And it isn't when they're old like us, it's now, so that when we go into this new system, we, the voters, have the power.
Yes.
That's what we have to do. And that's for everybody in the future. So yeah, we'll make sure, Chris, I want to make sure that you get a dime cards and some dime cards that you can pass out too.
Great.
Spread the word, because this is the opportunity. And I'm so glad to have met you today.
Oh,
especially.
absolutely. You too, Lynette. It was very great to meet you.
We've got to empower these younger people. They have taught us away from sound money because it benefits governments and corporations. But
Right.
it is time for the public to be beneficiary of all the hard work that we put out. Instead of getting, in terms of ounces of gold, we are paid less today at, I think, an average wage of somewhere around 68 grand than we were in 1913, with an average annual wage of $800. And that's what inflation does. It's, what did they say? They said, not one man in a million understands inflation. Unfortunately, Jerome Powell and Christine Lagarde both came out shortly after that and said, we don't really understand this inflation. Well, consider that they're the ones that are supposed to moderate it. That's really what their job is. Kind of scary that they don't.
It is. It is so scary. Yes. That they actually admitted that. I didn't see that. Wow. They just admitted it, huh?
Yep. I mean, no, they don't. It's out of their control. The system is based upon where the flow of funds go, because all of that money that was printed into existence, and particularly since 2008, it's in the system and it just sloshes from this place to the next place. So this goes down, that goes up, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we're on a bridge in a hurricane that's swinging back and forth right now. And what we don't know is how long it will hold up.
Yeah.
But we need people like you that's out there fighting. And so we need to support people like you. We need to give you the tools that you need to help spread the word, so that the people that are working on our behalf has the information that they need to make educated choices that actually support their community. Because after all, my favorite question, how many times can you be lied to when you do not know the truth?
And it's constant though out there, the constant misinformation that's out there about so much. And people just don't realize that chances are, whenever you're watching, it doesn't matter what the show is, whether it's like a news broadcast, just listening to how things are worded. I mean, you have to pick up on the fact that more times than not, these so-called news sources, they have an agenda. They
Yes,
really
they
do. They have an agenda, and you just have to listen carefully and not necessarily take what they're saying at face value. I think it's important to constantly, anytime you're hearing anything on an alleged news show, or there's some sort of argument, and this is broader than just this issue at all, you need to be thinking about, why is this being put in front of me? What's their agenda? Who's benefiting? All of those, because chances are, and that's a classic example right here with gold and silver and the banks and the corporations. They have a vested interest in putting forth a certain narrative, and that's who owns all of the news networks and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, right? It's the corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have an agenda.
They own everything. They helped create this garbage money to begin with. It was the corporations that benefited. I mean, it's mind blowing, but I have the proof from the horse's mouth of how they took corporate debt and converted it into this. And it still is, and it's printed right on there.
Gosh.
It's a note everywhere in the world. It's a note. A note is a debt instrument. I don't want to work for corporate debt. I want to work for sound money.
Me too. Well, the good news though is we're starting to see more more and more alternatives, shows like this that are out there where there can be at least we have a fighting chance to get
Oh, we
some
do.
other. Yes, yeah. So we have a fighting chance in terms of media. Media has become a lot more decentralized than it used to be. I mean, just think about how it was even back in the 80s. What we had, three major networks, right? That's it, and that's where you
True.
got your news from, or two, however many. Now we have a fighting chance. I mean, things are much more decentralized now in terms of what information gets out there. I mean, you've got to be a little bit more careful because, I mean, half the videos that you see on social media, they're just completely AI generated. So you have to be careful, but
Yes.
at least it's decentralized.
Yes, I agree. And that brings up another topic that I don't think we have time to talk about today. But you did bring up the 80s and President Reagan did bring over Rupert Murdoch and change laws so that they could create this perception management machine that
Yep.
is alive and well today.
Yes.
So this has been
Alright.
great. And
Oh, yes, it has.
think about what kind of support you really need. If you're running into a wall, what is that wall? And then maybe we can figure out how to create the tools that you need to overcome that wall from the
Sure.
political side. Because I haven't had this conversation with anybody, before.
Oh,
But if
okay.
you asked me like one thing about me, who I am, is I am a creative. So there are no problems that cannot be resolved and figured out. And so actually getting it from the horse's mouth, this is what I'm running up against. Okay. So I'm certain, I really am certain that I can create a tool to help you break that wall down.
Yes. Well, great. Well, in terms of winning in politics, it really comes down to there's two basic things that it comes down to. Number one, certainly money. That's a big part of it. I mean, we're up against a behemoth, okay? The other part of it too is organization and grassroots support. You can overcome a lot of that right now. I mean, I've got 15 volunteers right now that are helping with my campaign, at least 15 that are helping in some way. They didn't have the ability to really give that much, but what they're doing is we figured out other ways that they can help out. So that's the other thing that I think people should take from this is you need to figure out what your skill set is. That's something that's really, really important. So for example, some things that I'm good at, I'm pretty good at writing, I'm pretty good at public speaking, I'm pretty good at reading bills. Those are some of the things that I'm pretty good at. Okay. So, but there's other things that I'm not particularly good at. I have to have, like, for example, here at my law office, I've got to have people working at my office that are going to help keep me on task because I can be distracted sometimes. So I've got a certain skill set, but figuring out what your skills are, knowing yourself, knowing what your skills are, and then figuring out how can I apply these skills to advance this cause. That's something that's really, really important. So I think everybody should really think hard on what am I good at? It could be it could be as simple as I'm good at typing. Somebody needs something typed out, or people that are helping me out that are just helping with stuffing envelopes, for example. That's how they could help out with the campaign. And so just figuring out what you're good at, what your skills are, and then I think that's probably the most important thing. Being able to make calls, having the wherewithal to make repeated calls, I should call it the mental endurance to make repeated calls over and over and over again. That's a skill. Having to just do monotonous tasks over and over and over again. I think that's a skill. So figuring out where you are with your skill set, I think that's really important.
And can it also be if they show up and say, okay, I'm here, what do you need? And then maybe you
Absolutely.
can fulfill that need too. You might not even absolutely, well, I'm good at this or I'm good. You might not know how you can help, but just kind of like this conversation. And I saw because of the conversation how I can help.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Well, I had a conversation with somebody the other night and they were really good at social media. And I said, well, I said, that would have been great to know like 2 or 3 months ago, but I've already got that covered. But here's what I do know. I've got some yard signs and I have these stakes that need to go into the yard signs. I've got 200 of them. Can you put these stakes in the yard signs for me? I know it's not really flashy, but that's what I need help with right now. But yeah, just asking how people can help. That's something else. Absolutely.
I got a lot out of this. I am going to schedule direct contact with the legislator and see what that feels like, smells like. I might have more questions for you and
Okay.
help on that.
Okay.
But also I see how I can help get these laws passed because you don't know what you don't know. And when a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, the truth
Yeah.
will seem outrageous and its speaker a raving lunatic.
Yes. Absolutely. It was really nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too. This is just the first time. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Tiger. Good job on that.
Thank you.
And glad that you're joining the effort more. And we'll figure out where everybody fits and how we can come together. Because the more of us that come together, I figure 3% of the global population. That's my goal.
That's great.
3%.
Who I'm very blessed to be part of their lives and part of their help. So,
And you've got the kangaroo coming your way.
oh, thank you so much. I want to thank my guests, both Lynette and Chris. I want to thank all of you for coming. And you all need to learn how to activate your legislation in your states unless you already have laws for sound money. So please contact Chris. It's in the description below. Now, for incredible sound money education, you can't beat any more than my teacher over here, Lynette. Amazing lady, amazing channel, amazing analysis. I've included her contact information below. So if you don't go to her channel, you're going to miss out big time. I want to thank my guests again. Thank you, Lynette. Thank you, Chris.
Okay. Thank
And-
you. Thanks, Lynette. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. We'll be talking soon.
Okay. Bye.